大家好，今天是2023年5月19日星期五啊。那这个频道的话，我每次会找一篇英文的网页，那内容不拘，我会先跟大家过一下里面在讲的东西啊。再来第二阶段的话，就会是我自己的一个练习时间，我会把里面的内容全部给朗读出来，然后作为我英文口说练习的一部分。这样好，那今天的这篇文章呢是继承昨天的内容继续延伸下来，就是昨天的话看到说为什么美国，特别也不是看到，是美国说他们上一季新增的发电量呢有超过一半是由可再生能源来提供的哈。那这边的话就我就去看了一下说为什么会有如此迅猛的发展，就是整个发电量。可再生能源的发电量整个新增的幅度超出预期，超过一半哦。那这边的话就有这个 World Resources Institute 在2020年9月的时候写了一篇文章，他们那时候就观察到这个现象啊，写了一篇文章，试着去解释，这件，试着去解释它为什么发展的这么的快。那这边的话，直接有几个啦，一个是说政策上面的支持，就是那个有个目标，就是在不知道在2050，在不知道在几年之前呢，我们的气温不能再升高超过不能升高超过1.5度 C，然后这个政策，然后第二个的话就是在之前有那个金融危机嘛，在08年的时候有一个有次级房贷引发的全世界的金融危机，那时候呢，中国跟美国他们就不约而同的选择了这个可再生能源，然后来作为一个基建项目的这个刺激法案呢、作为基建项目嘛，然后提出了一些法案去刺激它，比如说什么关税或者是什么补贴、什么税务减免等等的。那这些的话，就有办法去降低整一个这个部署的价格，部署可再生能源的价格哦。那在价格降低之后，有政策的支持，他们基本上也鼓励这件事情。再来就是周围的影响力嘛，那就是说，如果隔壁有盖太阳能板的话，如果它的价钱算合理，然后也不会太复杂，去申请一些资料啊，或者是去买材料，请包商来帮你盖之类的，那这些东西都算简单，可以达到的话，那其实会达成一种模仿效应，就是附近的人，他应该是说美国吧，这边我不确定哈。那边的话，可能就是大家会争相模仿，群众效应嘛，从众啊。那在从众，然后然后整个政策有支持，它越盖越多，然后盖起来之后啊，那盖起来之后规模化之后呢，成本就会降低嘛。那成本降低之后，就会吸引更多的人来盖，然后来盖完之后呢，规模变大了，对不对？所以成本又降低了，然后就更多人来盖，然后形成一种良性的循环。所以不只是单单一种因素，而是很多种不同的东西合在一起，然后来造成说，今天我们看到了这个可再生能源的发展算是欣欣向荣哈。好，那这边它后面其实还有讲了一些事件，它整理了一些跟可再生能源发展相关的事件哦。那这边的话，直接来看一个这个好了。2015年，他们的成长速度飞快嘛，photo photo photovoltaic cost reaching cost tipping point。大概15年的时候，看起来17年的时候还发生蛮多事情的哦。好，那这个就是今天给大家稍微读一下的内容。那接着的话是我自己的练习时间，我会念到差不多念到这边吧，因为后面还有一大段节，有点太长哈。那我今天就念它的前半段。Well, explaining the exponential growth of renewable energy. The rapid growth of solar and wind power in recent years has breathed hope into global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and limit the most dangerous effect in climate change. In 2010, in 2010, solar and wind combined made up only 1.7% of global electricity generation. By last year, which is in 2020, it had climbed to 8.7%, far higher than what had previously been predicted by mainstream energy models. For example, in 2012, the International Energy Agency expected that global solar energy generation will reach 550 terawatt hours in 2030, but that number was exceeded by 2018. These models often assume the growth of solar and will be linear, but in reality, the growth has been exponential. Understanding the exponential growth of renewable energy in the past gives us reason to be more optimistic about how fast it can ramp up to meet climate goals in the future. This article explains the reasons behind solar and wind's growth, how much progress has already been made, and what's needed to go even further. Why is renewable energy growing so fast? Falling costs have been the biggest factor in the explosion of renewable energy. Since 2010, the cost of solar photovoltaic electricity has fallen 85%, and the cost of both onshore and offshore wind electricity have been cut by about half. Both of these renewable sources are now cost competitive with fossil fuel electricity. Costs have fallen so dramatically due to positive feedback loops. The more the renewable energy technologies are deployed, the cheaper they become due to the economies of scale and competitive supply chains, among other factors. These falling costs, in turn, spur more deployment. For example, in the past decade, each time that the amount of solar capacity deployed worldwide has doubled, the price of installing solar capacity has declined by 34%. As renewable energy technologies are modular and standardized, cost improvement or technological advances made in one place can be quickly copied elsewhere. Other aspects of renewable energy deployment are so self-reinforcing. As renewables grow in popularity, expand their political influence, and attract more finance, it becomes easier to leverage further policy support and finance. As financiers become more familiar with the technical and project risks of renewable energy, the cost of capital has decreased. In addition, evidence suggests the spread of renewable energy is socially contagious. When one house installs rooftop solar, the neighbors who see it and talk about it are more likely to install rooftop solar themselves. Policy support has also been essential for the growth of renewable energy. Renewable energy tax credits and subsidies, feed-in tariffs, and competitive auctions have all helped reduce costs and spur deployment. And government investment in research and development has been essential in promoting innovation in renewable energy. China, Europe, and the United States have become leaders in solar and wind through policy support. And worldwide, 165 countries have targets to increase renewable energy. It's not just countries either. More than 600 cities worldwide have 100% renewable energy targets. A timeline of renewable energy growth. Wind energy first took off in the early 2000s, while solar energy took off about a decade later, but has been growing even faster than wind. The factors driving the growth in renewable energy has been systemic. but certain key moments have reflected the larger trends or acted as turning points in renewable energy adoption. Understanding S-curve growth dynamics. According to the International Energy Agency, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, renewables need to reach 61% of global electricity by 2030 and 88% by 2050, with solar and wind making up the dominant share. Reaching such high levels of renewables sounds daunting, but it's less than so when you consider the power of exponential growth. The market share of solar and wind in global electricity generation grew at a compound of average annual growth rate about 15% from 2015 to 2020. If exponential growth continued this rate, solar and wind would reach 45% of electricity generation by 2030 and 100% by 2033. Problem solved? Not quite. History, Historically, technologies that are growing exponentially have a top speed for growth, a maximum growth rate that is achieved that lasts a while and then slows down as it approaches 100% adoption. This pattern is known as an S-curve. A new article in Nature Energy attempts to find out what that top speed is for solar and wind energy growth by looking at the countries that are furthest along and have already reached the steepest part of the S curve for either solar or wind. They found that in the countries where solar growth has stabilized at the maximum rate, that growth has been on average 0.6% of the total electricity supply per year. This is lower than the 1.4% annual rate needed globally to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement. According to their own benchmarks, Chile is the only country with a mature solar market where the maximum growth rate has been higher than what's needed. Meanwhile, in the countries where onshore wind growth has stabilized at the maximum rate, that growth has been on average of 0.8% of the total electricity supply per year, which is lower than the 1.3 annual rate needed globally. Only a handful of countries with mature wind markets have had a maximum growth rate higher than what's needed, including Ireland, Portugal, and Brazil. Countries like these prove that growth this rapid can be achieved, but the key will be to sustain high maximum growth rates and do it globally, not just select countries with ideal conditions. What will happen to renewable energy in the future? Despite clear momentum, it does appear that growth in renewables must be accelerated. Though much uncertainty remains over how much acceleration is needed, more policy support is needed to make sure that the renewable energy adoption follows an S curve and grows fast enough to meet the Paris Agreement's goals. All countries, including those that are not yet leaders in this sector, will need to incentivize rapid deployment and keep reducing costs. The graphic below illustrates one potential pathway for how solar and wind could reach the climate targets needed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is not only not shape and S curve could make to meet the targets, nor necessarily the most likely, but it gives a general sense of what's needed. Okay, pass. Governments should set targets and requirements for the use of renewable energy. Currently, these are most common in the power sector, but they should also be applied to other end-use sectors like heating and cooling, industry, and transportation. Governments will also need to increase the flexibility of the electricity grid to accommodate renewables. For example, by investing in long-range transmission lines and introducing new energy storage technologies. Despite the challenges that need to be overcome, a nonlinear change is a powerful force. If we time travel to a decade ago, energy industry experts would be shocked to hear how much renewable energy costs have fallen and how yearly deployment has quadrupled. Quadrupled. Hmm? How shocked will we be in 2030? It depends on what we do today. 哦，好，那今天就到这里为止，我们下次再见了，拜拜。